with the tracking tools in Nuke. This one is not going to be a follow-along video. This is going to be take notes because we've already basically done this kind of stuff. I'm going to show you some extra things, and you should already be able to take it from here to the end with that little bit of stuff that's on there, okay? So in our last one, we went and did this, okay? And if you weren't here last week or you didn't get a chance to play with this, play with it. We took this piece of footage and we tracked it, and we tracked the car's headlights, and we added some animations to different pieces. So here you can see that these color bars follow the car's headlights, okay? And then they just stop. All right, so this is what we're going to continue doing, is using the 2D tracker and seeing what else we can do. So I'm going to use a different piece of footage. Now let's look at this piece of footage here. Let's say on this piece of footage we wanted to replace the screen, because that's a common thing that you'll get in the industry, is you have a screen and you need to replace it. So what could I track on this piece of footage? Right, the corners of the screen. Now if you look at this though, do you see an issue with tracking the corners of the screen?
Yes.
What is it?
The hand is in the way.
Hand's in the way. We only have 3 corners. So if we actually had this piece of footage and all we had were 2D trackers, we would have a very difficult time tracking this piece of footage because the hand is in the way. So what we're going to do is, today we're going to focus on 2D trackers. The rest of the week, before next week, we're going to focus on 2D trackers. Next week, we're going to learn how we would track a piece of footage like this, okay? That's planar tracking, which is fake. It's like 2.5D, okay? What we're going to do is this one. So if we look at this piece of footage, we have all 4 corners available, okay? Depending on the kind of job that you would get, and I mean job as far as like what you need to complete, you may have to do 2D tracking, planar tracking, 3D tracking, or 4D tracking where you're tracking back in time. Okay, that's a joke. I'm going to drag this down to my new comp. Remember, when we're in Nuke, we don't bring in a movie, we bring in a sequence. Now this one is only 10 seconds long, and I kind of want the entire thing in there, okay? So I'm going to render this out to a TIFF sequence. And I'm going to put this into 2560 work 2D tracking source footage, and I'm going to put this as iPhone hold. Okay, and I make sure it's name.number.extension. The extension will go on there, and I'm going to put it in a subfolder called iPhone hold. So now when I render this, I should get iPhone hold dot whatever number frame it's on dot TIFF. Okay, 283 frames. That's not horrible.
What are the output settings? You want TIFF?
TIFF, yes.
That's all.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay. So remember, we don't bring video into Nuke because what could happen is when we go into Nuke, it could just not read the footage, or it's trying to read it as we're working and uncompress it and recompress it and do all this stuff. So we just bring a TIFF sequence, it's uncompressed, and we're good to go. All right. So now I'm going to read my footage in here. So I need to go back to my 2D tracking, source footage, iPhone hold, grab my footage. There it is. So the question is, do I always have to go back and find my footage? So in here, it already found my footage because I was already loaded onto this machine, right? So if I click off of this and hit S, remember how we set the project name here? Okay. So my project directory is 2560. So if I go to this and I find where 2560 is and I erase all of the stuff before it and hit enter, it'll find my footage. Okay, so it's going into the work folder, into 2D tracking, into source footage cars, and then finding the footage there. So if I were to move my footage, and this isn't going to work because I'm on this computer, but let's say I moved this folder onto my C drive. Okay, I guess I can try that. Let me just save. And I'm going to copy this to the desktop just so, oop, not the desktop, 4 gigs. See how much room we use? All right.
That's probably all your recorded videos.
No, that's just this class. 4 gigs still, holy cow. Copy that to the desktop. Copy the iPhone hold to the desktop. Yeah. Well, that's footage. It just eats it up. That cars, look at how big this is. Each one of these files is 6 megabytes. Because it's 1920 by 1080, so it's a huge file format. All right, so now we'll go back into Nuke while we're waiting for that to happen. Now, what I recommend is you have a similar structure. So on my P drive here, I have my name, 2560, work and source, blah, 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 all those. So if you copy your stuff home, make sure you copy that whole last name folder, okay, that whole initial folder, and make sure your stuff is set correctly. So now if I go to open my comp from the desktop, home, desktop, here, it's still finding it because it's on the P drive because it's all linked. But if I go and I set this to, oops, my project directory to a different area like the desktop, and then I say reload my footage, oops, not looking at it, there it goes. So it's not going to find it because there is no work folder, there is no 2D tracking, there is no source footage. So if I go to the desktop folder again, and I make sure that that folder structure is there, work, 2D tracking. I don't think it needs that. We'll find out. And then, oops, and I loaded the wrong one. Let me just go to the iPhone, which shouldn't load. There we go. Okay. So now I have my source footage here. I'm going to drop my iPhone hold in here. And so what this is going to do is go in the work, 2D tracking, source footage, iPhone hold. Work, 2D tracking, source footage, iPhone hold. Okay. So now when I reload this, it'll find it. So I don't need the capitals. So now as I switch between my home computer and there, all I have to do is hit S, tell it where my new project folder is. So this one's going to be on the P drive. This one's going to be on here, here, here. Oops, 2560 was my work folder. There we go. And then I go back to this. I hit reload. And now it's loading my one off of the P drive. Okay? Now, as long as I have that set up there, I don't need to go back and re-link everything. Okay?
What about the colorful ones?
These ones, these are locked in here. Those are like solids in After Effects. So there's no importing there. Okay? All right. So we have this piece of footage. And what I want to do is just like we've done before, is I want to track this piece of footage. So before what we did was we tracked each one individually. Okay? With something like this, it's pretty obvious where each corner is, and I don't think I'm going to run into too big of an issue if I were to try to track all 4 corners at the same time. So I'm going to go to my 2D tracker, and I'm going to create 4 tracks. Okay, so this tracker I'm going to set to the bottom left. Okay, and this is important. Starting at the bottom left, we spit out our gum, and then we go counterclockwise. Okay, so bottom. No, we spit out our gum. Starting at the bottom left, we go with track number 1. Then we go to track number 2, and we go to the next corner. Then we go to track number 3, and we go to the top right corner. Then we go to track number 4, and we go to the top left corner. Okay? Now, there's a specific reason we're doing this, which you'll see after all of this is done. Okay? So, I have all 4 tracks ready to go. And if you look, do you see I'm at frame 29 here? So what that means is I didn't start my tracking at frame 1. Totally fine, you can do that. Sometimes you'll find going to the middle of your footage and going backwards and forwards is actually better to track your stuff, just because you don't have as much motion sometimes. You can track backwards, forwards, diagonally. So I'm going to go to here, track backwards.
Why do they have to be counterclockwise? Can you be clockwise?
Counterclockwise. You'll see. I'm saving it. It's a surprise ending. When you find out why, you'll be surprised. Right. So now, because all 4 tracks are enabled, it's actually tracking all 4 points. And as it's doing it, we're only seeing the 4th one, but all of these are or should be doing it. Okay? Now we have to watch each one of these, but what should happen is there should be a consistent pattern that evolves, because all 4 items are on the same device. So if I went and turned this like that, all 4 of these should probably turn the same way, right? It makes sense. All right. So, nope, they all didn't, whatever. You may have to do that. And that might be just a fun feature inside of Nuke that they've added. So I've grabbed all of them and now they'll all track together. Okay. Now, I guess because I didn't click on track 4, it's not doing track 4. Now, another neat feature, see underneath my tracker, it says E.000121, error. So that's basically Nuke saying, I don't think there's an error. There's a very, 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 very small chance there's an error with this. I think I'm doing a good job. If that was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, we're probably getting some errors and we probably want to stop the tracker, fix it, and then go back to what it's doing. Now we'll see that this tracker is going to stop somewhere around here. Okay, so we're at 80%, 82%. Pretty soon it's going to stop moving. 7 seconds left. Right there, okay? Now my footage is only 282 frames. That's why it stopped. But my timeline on the bottom is obviously more than 282 frames. This little guy right here where it says global, I can set this to different versions of my timeline. So imagine that in After Effects you have your work area, right? It's essentially like your work area. Your timeline is infinite, but this sets our work area to what we're working on. And so most of the time I'll just set it to input. That way we can see my footage is 282 frames. I only want to see 282 frames. All right, so now as we rewind, and very dangerous if I click there. There we go. As I click and drag, I can see all these things are right on top of it. Now, it's hard to tell because there's stuff in the way, so we really can't see what's going on. It looks like track number 2, whoa, what happened there? Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. It looks like track number 2 might be off a bit. It looks like track number 1 might also be off a bit. It looks like track number 3 might also be off a bit, okay? But it's not gonna matter because when I'm done with this, I can go back and fix all that stuff and then it'll automatically update everything else. All right, so I have all 4 of my tracks ready to go. And if you look, I have track 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to output something. Now before, do you remember how we got the information? How did we get the data from this tracker onto something else? Right. So we went to transform here, and we copied and pasted the translate to other stuff. We right-clicked, we went to copy animation, and then we pasted it on something else. So here, because I'm doing something different, I'm going to do this. See on the bottom where it says corner pin? I'm going to scoot this over. I'm going to rewind this to the beginning. There we go. Okay. So it says corner pin 2D, and it has all these other options here. So with this is going to actually allow me to output exactly what I need to connect to something to make it fit exactly where these pins are. So I'm going to say corner pin 2D, use current frame. Okay, and then I hit create. Error. I didn't click on them. There we go. And then I hit create. There we go. All right, so it creates this. And with this, we get a green arrow. So the tracker goes to the green arrow to the corner pin. And if I were to create a piece of footage like a color bars, perfect. I connect my corner pin to my color bars, and I look at my corner pin color bars right here. You'll you'll see that it looks exactly like this, okay? And if I were to hit play, we'll see it move, but it's really weird how it's moving, okay? Now it's flickering just because it's loading. Don't worry about the flickering part. Okay, but it definitely is moving, and it seems to be moving at the same speed that the device was moving. But on this corner pin, I have to set an option, okay? So right now, it doesn't know where the corners of this item is. So I'm going to go to the from node and say set to input. Let me make sure that my color bars, that's 1920. What is this, 1920? Okay. That's not 1920. Why are you so big? Oh, because it's just cropping it, right? Okay. So now I'm going to merge these two together. So I'm going to say this is my A, that's my B. Let me see what it looks like. And Shazam. Whoops, wrong button. I'm not in After Effects. So now, if you look at this, I've merged those two things together. So now my color bars fit perfectly on this screen. Ish, right. Okay, so it doesn't matter that it doesn't fit perfectly because that green arrow is linked, meaning I go back to my tracker, I fix tracks 1, 2, and 3, and it'll update that information down the line. Now, why did I have to choose 1, 2, 3, 4 in counterclockwise order? Because the corner pin has 4 pins to it. It has 4 items. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all it's doing is copying these keyframes from one to the other. And the way it copies it is starting at the bottom left, counterclockwise. Okay? So that's the only reason I did it. But now if I go to the tracker here, you'll see that these have values 934. That value is copied to this. Number 2's is copied to this. Number 3 is copied to that. So it's doing the exact same thing we did last time, except it's doing it for us. We don't have to do all that stuff, okay? So typically, this is a preferred way to work when you're doing this kind of setup. If we were doing something with someone's fingers moving like this, we have 5 fingers, so we don't have a corner pin, okay? But maybe we would take like these 2 and these 2 and do a corner pin with an object, or do something like along those lines. Or maybe we would do a track here and a track here and just do rotation and position.
There's a lot to do with perspective though, right?
Right. Right, a lot to do with perspective and how this is working.
And the reason the corners are off is because you're tracking, obviously, if you look at the top left.
Is off. Right, so I'm going to go back to my tracker here. Just the tracker, I'm not going to look at the other piece of footage. And I'm going to rewind this to the beginning. I'm going to go to my track number 3, and I'm going to see, holy cow, what were you doing there? And I know exactly what happened is that I rewound it to the beginning, and then I didn't reposition it. So I'm going to move this tracker. Come on. There we go. Back to here. Look good there. Make sure it's good. I'm going to go back down to my corner down here on the bottom.
You can retrack them even though you have the pins. It will still.
Yep. Because it's linked, everything gets updated. Come on. Track 2. Track 2. I'll just do it this way. I won't. It just like jumped off the screen. I don't know what it was doing there. I'm still jumping. What are you doing, track number 2? All right, here's another way to do it. I know that the track's bad, so I can just clear forward, and now the tracking information's gone. So now I can just pull this over.
Now you should be.
I should be able to pull this over. Come on, track 2, don't be stupid. I'm on my move tool. I'm moving it. Clear forward, clear backwards, delete my current key. I don't know what it's doing. I'll just really zoom in here. There we go. Make that bigger. Make that bigger. All right. Here's where we just delete track number 2. We make a new make a new track number 2. Slide it into the mix. Come on. Maybe. Nope. It does not want to let me move that. That's fine. We'll adjust that later. Ah, come on. 5.
So we close it out. And
So
open
we
it back up
basically
again.
clear track 1 through 5 now.
It just doesn't want to move.
Maybe if you just started a
Settings, that.
Don't like you, Sean.
Not today.
So we don't make mistakes on tracking.
I'm recording everything.
That's fine.
All right, so let's delete tracker number 2. Yes, we're just going to delete that. I don't know why it's messing up. And again, this is just good practice. And look at it automatically connected these things because in Nuke's memory, everything's connected. So now we'll go back, and I'll go to my tracker. I will go to add track. There we go.
There we go.
Here you go.
Didn't like that.
Is Max working after that time?
Shouldn't be. I'm just going to delete that. Just delete that. Delete the tracker again. Delete this again. Go back to my tracker. All right. All right. So it didn't like something I was doing.
Maybe he's trying to update something and it's not showing and getting mad at you.
Let's see, now it's working fine. 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So now I'll grab all 4 of these again. I'm going to save my work. I'm going to tell it to track forward. And while we're doing this, I'm just going to create the corner pin now. Set to input. There we go. Okay. So now if we look at this, merge, because I haven't merged it in yet. A, B, view this. There we go. It matches pretty perfect. It might be a little bit off. I can always scoot it afterwards. Okay, so it's not a big deal. So now I'm going to grab my trackers. I'm going to say go ahead and track forward. And it's going to go ahead and track forward. Now again, I should is the keyword, be able to go back and tweak this after the fact. Okay? Now there's no reason why those points were not lining up correctly and not moving the way they should have been. Everything should have been working fine. So far we've done nothing different except create a corner pin. That's the only thing we've done different.
And it's gone horribly wrong.
It's gone horribly wrong. Can abandon all hope of learning this today.
This is just a random question, but is that a put the car bar in it? Could we put something else? And
Oh, definitely, yes. I use the color bar as a placeholder to test it out. Good contrast.
Not that much, but,
Yes. You could
what
put
can
any
we
picture
put
there.
on? What can we cannot put on it?
You can put anything that is appropriate. Now keep in mind too, the size of this. So if you've got an image that's this big and you put it on there, it's going to squish it. So you want to find something that is already like portrait and not landscape. Okay? So here we go. So now if we just turn everything off and we rewind this and play it, you'll see that our color bars are now going to move with that phone. So he's not doing anything crazy, but just so you know, if he were to go like this, it would actually fit the screen.
Is there like a position you could put to specific trackers? Let's say that like instead of retracking, the tracking is perfect, but because if you look at how many points that it tracks, frames, it tracks every single frame. So if you want to nudge 1 or 2 frames a tiny bit, that's fine, but it has a Bezier almost to it.
Right.
You know, it has a certain flow that. What if a little spot's off but everything else is perfect?
You can
Let's see
still move all that stuff.
Your little corner floating right there, you know, like the little edge float.
Right. How we're seeing a little bit of green.
Yeah, that's a little skewed. I mean, like.
Right.
Like
I can adjust that. Okay. So here it is. Let me rewind it so we can see it in faster motion. So you see how it looks like it's attached to it. But we still have that little green hair. So on that corner pin, they have a from node. And this from node is where all the tweaking can happen. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of you being locked to that corner, I want you to nudge that corner over a little bit more. Now I have to know which corner is which corner. So I know that the bottom left is which number? 1. So I'm going to go to from 1, and I'm going to tweak these. Now, the cool thing about Nuke that I wish lots of programs had, some of them do, maybe just not mine in Photoshop. Scroll wheel is like your dial. So as I scroll wheel here, this is actually adjusting numbers. So you see how I'm adjusting these numbers and it's pulling it away from the edge? As I adjust these numbers again, I can push it closer to the edge. Perfect. So that's the X left and right. Now I'm going to go to the Y. And there it is. Okay, now I'll go to the next number, which is 2.
Now what about the skew rotation here a little bit?
What skew rotation? It's perfect.
Oh, so it's skewing it each
Yeah,
one.
it's just adjusting it. If I went crazy here,
Yeah.
right?
It's skewing it. Yeah, I got
Yep.
it. I see what's going on. And then how do you nudge it? Up and down? Or what?
Just using the scroll wheel. So I go one direction, that's wrong, go the other direction.
Gotcha.
You don't have to memorize anything, just figure out which direction you need to go. Also, if I'm on the right side of a number, it does the number to the right, right? So if I'm at 0 and I start doing this, it's doing decimal, okay? If I'm on the left side of the number, it'll do the number to the right. So now it's doing whole numbers, okay?
So that is the nudge, huh? It's called from.
Right, it's just the from. It's basically just repositioning how it's getting those points.
Without having to go in and remove.
Correct. So I have to go back and readjust all that stuff. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I'll do my tracker, I'll have my corner pin and it'll work, and maybe it's perfect here, but off there, and then perfect again, I'll animate the from. Okay, and that way I'm animating, I'm tracking on top of my tracking, basically.
Okay.
Okay, so whatever tricks you can do to get your stuff to line up correctly, that's what you want to do. So there is our piece of footage. Now this is set to an over, like you can see that's off a little bit right there still. So maybe I'll just tweak that a little bit more.
But you can animate it live.
Right, I can animate it just by making sure I have keyframes on it. Okay, just set a key, go back to the beginning, pull it right there. Okay, so now that'll be animated and I can tweak it. I think everything else is good. Okay, so now with this set to over, you see that it's basically just right on top of it, right? We're not getting any reflections though on the original piece of footage. It looked like there might have been some reflections inside here. No, I guess there isn't. In the other one there was.
So you just do another layer.
So you could do a plus in this case. The plus is going to put it on top of it. Because it's green, it looks horrible, but ideally we would remove the green and then put something else on top of that.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible of doing a layer of like, take a picture of like the ceiling, so you have light reflection?
Yes. Not with this specific object though. Okay, I could fake it.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, you take that image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you mask it off on top of that and put like an opacity on it, and it tracks it still. Like, like you can have the mask track that.
Well, I don't even really need to track it because it should kind of stay in the same spot. So if I went here
But the mask has to
and there,
be. That's what I mean. Like the mask has to.
and I set this to be a, oops, B, oops, RGB, A, RGB. Now I could, oh, let me go before this. There we go. I went after this. I should have gone before this. Come on.
You put a merger.
Yeah, I just merge it so that now we have, oh, because that's going to move too.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Can't
Yeah.
you roto it and then the roto?
Right, I could have rotoed it
follow?
too.
Will the roto follow? Can you parent that to
Mhm.
your?
To the color bars or anything, yeah.
No, what is the below that? What's
Corner
that?
pin?
Yeah, your corner pin. Can you do it?
Right, I could have anything go into the corner pin or create multiple corner pins to control any number of objects. So with this one, there's not actually like, there isn't as much reflection as I thought there would be.
But I'm just wondering, like, how do you do it then with a mask? You just roto out.
Well, this is already a mask, okay? So if I look at my corner pin, it's a mask. Okay, so it's right there. So if I wanted something on top of this, oops, let me uncheck that and go here. I'll go to bring my read node back in. There it is. I'll merge this into here. And if I look at the results, we should get something like that. So now I want to say, okay, well, I want to cut this out. So I'm going to use this. Remember the little node on the right of all these things as a mask? So I can say I want to use this as my mask.
Okay, now press play. Let's see if those reflections stay in place. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Right.
You have a picture of like a,
Right, a picture of a ceiling or whatever.
yeah,
Right.
wall.
A highlight.
So you're telling me the tracker gets a mask?
Right. Well, the tracker deforms the object, and wherever that object is a mask. Okay? So then we could use it for stuff like this. We could also use it as a way to isolate that area to cut out the green and have black there or have whatever there. Okay? Right. After, not this one, because this is just like dropping it in. When we do the next one, we'll get into the green screen stuff. We'll get into how do we actually remove the green and put our stuff on top of it. Because that way, that's what it should be, right? If the guy's hand, back to After Effects.
You're doing that in After Effects or Nuke?
Nuke. Okay, if the guy's hand is here, yeah, you can see his reflection in this. See his face right there. So if the guy has his hand on top of this, we can't just put an image on top because then it'll cut off his hand. We need to take the green out, slip our image in, and now it'll look like he's on there. And when we get to something like this, it's going to be more than just a solid image, right? Because why would you have a solid image with him doing this? Unless his phone's froze. So we would actually animate something going on. So animate him sliding something in there and having something else happen inside the screen. Okay? So this is, again, the next step to getting to that point. So what I want you to do between today and next class is make sure you can do this. Even if you track it 4, 5, 6, 7 times, do that because these techniques need to be ingrained in you. You need to understand how to do tracking so that when you get a piece of footage, you're not sitting there for 2 hours trying to figure out how to track. You just know how to do it. Okay? All right.